Well, good morning. It's Tuesday, March 9th, and we are gathered for a morning devotion. And again, we're using N.T. Wright's book, Lent for Everyone, the Gospel of Mark. And today's passage comes from Mark, chapter 7, verses 14 through 23. Jesus summoned the crowd again. "Listen to me, all of you," he said, "and get this straight. What goes into you from outside can't make you unclean. What makes you unclean is what comes out from the inside." When they got back into the house, away from the crowd, his disciples asked him about the parable. "You didn't get it either?" he asked. "Don't you see that whatever goes into someone from outside can't make them unclean? It doesn't go into the heart, it goes into the stomach and then carries on and outside through the drain. Result, all foods are clean. What makes someone unclean," he went on, "is what comes out of them. Evil intentions come from inside, out of a person's hearts. Immorality, theft, murder, adultery, greed, wickedness, treachery, debauchery, envy, slander, pride, and stupidity. These evil things all come from inside. They are what makes someone unclean." I watched as an angry crowd burnt a Russian flag. Soviet military aircraft had shot down a Korean civilian plane on September 1st, 1983, over the Pacific Ocean, on the suspicion that it had been spying. All on board were killed. It was at the height of the Cold War, and a plane which had taken off in the United States had strayed into Soviet airspace, almost certainly because of a computer malfunction. Around the world, not least in a considerable Korean community in Montreal, where I was then living, furious and grieving Koreans gave vent to their feelings. And when there is nobody you can actually attack, burning their flag is a powerful symbol of way of saying what we think of you. Flags are a comparatively modern invention, though ancient armies would carry standards that functioned in the same way. In the ancient world, especially in the ancient Jewish world, there were various badges of identity that had a similar function. When you kept certain customs, you were waving the flag and celebrating your national identity. If someone tried to abolish or stamp out those customs, this felt like a kick in the stomach, much as it had been with burning a flag. Among the first century Jewish customs that functioned in this way was a code that determined what you could and couldn't eat. The stories of the Maccabean martyrs from 2 centuries before had been told and retold. The 7 brothers who refused to submit to the Syrian megalomarchic king Antiochus, who in his efforts to enforce his kind of paganism on the Jews did his best to make the Jews abandon their food laws, and the most obvious feature to eat pork. One noble old man, forced to open his mouth to receive the forbidden food, spat it out again as they tortured him to death. Such stories were plentiful and served in turn to reinforce the ban. Don't let that side down. Don't side with those who want to destroy our nation and our customs. Don't let them burn your flag. Only when you have this picture firmly in mind can we appreciate why Jesus had to go into this house away from the crowd before he could explain one of his most cryptic sayings. What goes into you from the outside can't make you unclean. What makes you unclean is what comes from the inside. We today are perhaps more used to the distinction between outward physical things and inward worlds of feeling and thoughts. We are also predisposed in much Western culture to think of our inner world as more important than the outer. Most first century Jews didn't really make that distinction or the value judgment. For them, the saying was puzzling. It was perhaps the only way Jesus could address the larger issue raised by the question about washing hands, which was verses 2 through 5 in the earlier passage. What makes at stake is the issue of purity and impurity. Impurity matters because it's one of the key symbols of Judaism, and Jesus was radically redefining it. Is he burning that flag? Many people would think so, if they understood what he meant. Even the disciples didn't get it, so he explained it to them. Even he doesn't spell out the full implications. So Mark, writing for a non-Jewish community of Christians, has to make it clear in the bracketed end of verse 19. Watch how this works. First, Jesus declares that nothing that goes in through your mouth can make someone genuinely unclean in any deeply significant sense. Second, he explains this a little further. Food, of whatever sort, simply goes in one end and out the other. This saying, too, is still cryptic, needing no more move to the more explicit. So third, Mark adds this extra note, the results. All food are clean. What? With that, we might think the flag has been burned, and with it, all chances of Jesus ever being seen in a positive light from within Judaism. But wait, what he's saying now? He hasn't abolished the distinction between an unclean. He hasn't said purity doesn't matter. It's simply that he has a far deeper, far more radical idea of what purity is. Outward purity, simply washing the hands, not eating certain foods, is simply a signpost to the real thing. Don't mistake the signpost, he is saying, for the reality. I come to give you the reality. He has, but how? Surely what he's now saying is very bad news indeed. What makes someone unclean is what comes out of them, out of the person's heart. He lists the things he has in mind, and a sad, sordid array it makes. Immorality, theft, murder, greed, envy, and wrath. This isn't a liberalizing tendency of some imagination. This is the ultimate standard. God always wanted human beings to be genuine humans. Greed, pride, and the other things corrupt and destroy that genuine humanness. If Jesus had simply said, well, no more rules, do what comes naturally, what we would have done naturally is, alas, a lot of the things in the list, adultery, treachery, and so on. So what follows from this? Everything we know about Jesus indicates that he doesn't want to leave it there. He is telling his disciples all of this just to make them and the rest of us feel guilty. He is hinting at something more than diagnosis. He believes he has the treatment we require. He has a cure for the impure heart. He is setting an absolute standard and providing the means by which, to our amazement, we are to attain it. Has he burnt the flag? Well, actually, no. Change the picture. He has taken down the signposts that point to purity, and he has put up in their place a new sign, which indicates the purity itself has arisen. This raises all kinds of problems for us. Every pastor, every honest Christian knows that failings and impurities that still lurk within us. But Jesus' first followers were equally uncompromising. These things must be put to death, and because of Jesus, they can be. So, really simple point Jesus is saying, and he's talking about the Jewish customs and purity laws about food and everything. What you eat doesn't matter. And in the book of Acts, you see that with Peter and his dreams that he has later on. But Jesus is saying it's what's in your heart that matters. Which, if your heart is pure, then all that list that he had there, none of those things should happen. What's in your heart is what makes you a good person. What's in your heart is what makes you a disciple of Jesus. What's in your heart is what makes you pure. Not what you eat, in this case, not what you eat, but it's what you say, what you do, how you act. Those are the things that make you impure. And so, as we talk about our stepping stones, this is one more stepping stone. Jesus was basically saying the dietary customs of their time didn't really matter. That didn't matter. It didn't make you impure. It didn't make you unclean. So it's one more stepping stone on our walk to Good Friday. May you go in peace and the love of Christ.